So I want to start this video off being honest with you here. Even though on paper I'm doing fine financially, I'm doing not bad at all. The reality is, and I know a lot of people can relate to this, I still feel behind in a lot of aspects, probably way more than I should. Sometimes in my own thoughts, I feel like I should be further along from where I am. I should have more invested, more money going into experiences I want to do, should have a house, should be starting a family any day. And I feel like a lot of people relate to that where they look about, especially on things like social media, and they feel like everyone just knows a shortcut that they don't. And it's strange because on paper, I know I'm doing okay. I know the numbers, I know everything going on with the situation, and I know I'm doing okay. But that feeling of not being where I should be still creeps up on me somehow and makes my chest just a wee bit tighter from time to time, even though I know it shouldn't. And so with that, I'm going to go over 5 signs that you can actually look at to reliably evaluate your situation that's not based on hype and flexing money, anything like that. Some real situations grounded in reality. But before going into the signs specifically, I think it's important to maybe talk about why so many people feel like this. And the reality is, it's not truth that's making us feel like this. It's comparison. Most of us don't necessarily feel behind because of what it says on paper, and then we're looking up averages and we're seeing where we fall into it. In reality, we feel behind because we compare ourselves to other people who might be further along than us. And sometimes it's easy to look at these people and be like, well, if I worked as hard as them, or if I was as smart as them, or if I could get as fit as them, if I could get as dedicated as them, I could be where they are. But in reality, it's not that simple. And I think deep down, everyone knows that. So when it comes to comparing yourself to people, the reality is you should only really be comparing yourself to, well, the only other person that has the exact same experiences as you in every facet of life. And in case you couldn't tell, that person is you. You should only be comparing yourself to who you were however long ago. Maybe you could look at UK or population averages. That has its problems as well. But the main person you should be comparing yourself to is just yourself. And then not to mention, just for perspective, if we're to really zoom out on the average person, the reality is the amount of money that you're likely spending on subscriptions or commuting to work or your coffees that you're having from day to day, the amount of money you're spending on that is what some people are earning monthly or yearly from their jobs. It really is a tendency for us to compare locally as opposed to globally. And I guess it does make more sense, and it isn't particularly fair to say you've got a meal the next day, so you've got nothing to moan about. It's not particularly fair, even though it might be true. Another important distinction to make before moving on to the signs specifically is that when I'm speaking about doing well financially, realistically, this could be split into 2 main categories. You've got wealth, and then you've got status. The main way that you would separate the two is that wealth is normally relatively invisible. It's not something you see or can just identify normally on a person. Whereas status, its whole purpose is to be broadcast, and it's for you to be able to see it. So status might be stuff like expensive cars or designer clothing, stuff that you're flexing for everyone to see, to let people know that you've got some amount of money behind you, or at least looks like it. Whereas wealth, that can be much more categorized by stuff like large savings amount or large investments, large pensions, emergency funds, a regular strong income coming in. These types of things aren't just showable unless you whip out a bank statement, I suppose. They're not meant to be shown off. And that's the thing. Status is somewhat a zero-sum game, as in order for your status to work, you need to be signaling to someone that you're above for it to get the intended effect. So for you to win in the status game, someone has to lose. Whereas wealth, it's not zero-sum. Everyone can win when it comes to that. So if you do feel like you're behind and you're not where you should be, try and bear in mind, are you comparing yourself to status symbols, to things that are bought to show off? Because if you are, it's fruitless. It's not an apt comparison again. What their wealth might be in the background might be completely different, and likely is a lot of the time. And it's important to bear that distinction between status and wealth in mind, as comparing your wealth to someone's status symbols is just not going to work. And again, it's going to a lot of the time lead to you feeling like you're behind in these parts of life, when in reality that's just not the case, as it's again not an apt comparison. Now, with that framework established, we're now going to move on to the signs that you can actually properly use to assess how you're doing and where you're at financially. So the first sign that you're actually doing not bad financially at all is that you're not only earning money, but you're keeping money as well. And what I mean by that is that at the end of the month, or however frequently you get paid, do you have money that's being put away? Do you have money that's going into savings or investments or stuff like that, as opposed to just being at zero, living paycheck to paycheck? Do you have money that's going away for your future? For reference, the average person in the UK, according to research from Finder in 2023, was that they had about £17,000 in savings. But with that, and this is what I meant earlier by saying that comparing yourself to national averages isn't necessarily always a good idea, is that despite the average person having that in savings, a lot of people don't have any at all when it comes to money put away. A good way this is highlighted is that 20% of Gen Zs don't have any savings, and then 26% of millennials don't have any savings, and then 30% of Gen Xers don't have any savings either. So even though the average person has 17,000 in the UK, when you actually look into the specifics, there's a lot of people who don't have any savings at all put aside. And this definitely is a risky position for a lot of people to be in, as all it takes is one expense, one burst tire or boiler on the brink, and they can find themselves in a really dire position when it comes to trying to get money together to pay for these emergencies. So with that in mind, if you're putting any amount of money away, no matter how small, each month, and you're able to do that consistently without needing to dip into it, then you're already ahead of a large portion of the population. If you're managing to do this, then you're doing something that a lot of people are really struggling to manage. So be proud of yourself with that, because again, clearly a lot of people are finding this really difficult. The next sign that you're doing not bad at all when it comes to your finances is that debt is not running your life. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm no Dave Ramsey when it comes to debt. I do believe that debt has a place in building financial goals if used properly. And that's the key phrase. As long as it's kept under control and on a leash and you have a good manage of it and a good handle of it, debt can be really useful and can be, again, powerful leverage. But importantly, if you're unable to do that, then just as much as it would help you, it will destroy whatever financial future you hope to have for yourself. So on that note, if you're not needing to borrow to survive day to day, and you're not needing to shift money between credit cards to pay off balances, and your bills are regular and manageable when it comes to your debt, again, you're in a really good position that a lot of people really struggle with day to day. So count yourself as one of the ones that are better off if you're got debt under control, or maybe even in a position where you've not had to take any debt at all. If you're able to pay off your essentials or your weekly shop or even just your train tickets on credit and just pay that off no problem, manageably, then you're ahead of the curve. So again, you can pat yourself on the back if you're in that position. Sign 3 that you're actually in a better financial position than you give yourself credit for is that you actually, as simple as it sounds, know what's going on financially. And what I mean by that is that you really know what your budget is day to day or month to month or even yearly. You know what you're earning, what you're spending, what you're saving, and what you already have saved, and then what debts you might have as well that need to be paid down. If you know all of this and you have a way of tracking it and you've got it all nice and neat and looking pretty on an Excel sheet or something like that, then you are again way ahead of the curve. As most people, if I was to stop them in the street and ask them, so what's your monthly expenditure? How much do you have in your ISAs? What does your pension look like? I can guarantee you a majority of people will not be able to answer that question reliably. It sounds obvious and it sounds simple, but money is a lot of the time, it's just something that people feel as opposed to actually measure. And it does somewhat make sense, as it can be scary and it can be anxiety inducing for people to take a hard look at this stuff and really evaluate their position. And it is really important, because if you don't know clearly what's going on, then you have no chance of fixing it if something's going wrong. If you don't understand where you are you can't know where you're going. So if you're not on top of this already, consider start getting into it. As yes, it might be a bit boring and a bit tedious, but once it's set up, it's significantly easier moving forward, and the amount of clarity and frankly the reducement in anxiety, knowing where you are and what you need to do, it's so much better than just walking through it like a thick fog, just assuming that you're going to end up where you want to go. The next sign is somewhat in a similar vein. It's not necessarily knowing exactly where you are at the moment, knowing your bills, but it's knowing where you're going and where you want to end up. As a lot of people have no clue what their retirement might look like. And I know for people who might be in their 20s or 30s, they might think that's a long time away. There's no need for me to start thinking about stuff like that. And while it might be somewhat less important, having a clear vision on this stuff can really help you get focused with your saving goals, and knowing that early can actually make it so that your retirement might end up be able to get moved a bit closer than when you initially thought, as you're able to attack it and know what you need to do. And it doesn't even necessarily need to be something like retirement. It could be that you have clear future goals financially that you want to hit in the next year, 5 years, 10 years. It could be paying off a mortgage, or having enough money saved up to be able to help your kid with a deposit, or it could be having an emergency fund in place. These future goals and having them clearly set puts you again ahead of the curve when it comes to most people in their financial situations and how they're planning them. And the reason having something like this in place is important is because, well, think about it. It's much harder to hit a goal if you don't know what the goal is. So if you have a target to attack, you're way more likely to be motivated to do so. So it's bewildering to me that more people don't take this approach when it comes to their finances. And so again, if you're doing this, if you've got your 1 year goals, your 5 year goals, your 10 year goals, or even a retirement plan that you're wanting to achieve over the next couple decades, then you're so far ahead and you're not giving yourself enough credit when it comes to your financial position. And the last sign I think I'm going to cover, and it's a relatively simple one, and it is somewhat intuitive, but is your net worth growing over time? Now, an important caveat to that before you start thinking, oh shit, I've got less net worth than I did 3 months ago, my finances are down the toilet, it's game over. It needs to be zoomed right out. It needs to be a long-term look at how your net worth's doing. This should be extrapolated out when you're looking at this. It shouldn't be comparing just to what you done last month. This should be years, if possible, that you should be looking back and seeing what direction you're going. You can look month to month if you want to zoom in to get specifics, but when looking at the trend overall, you should look at the entire history and see what direction it's going. It really is important to get that zoomed out look, as the reality is, and you're perfectly aware of it, life happens. Some things can't be controlled for. Emergencies are going to happen. Big bills are going to come in when you least expect it. And sacrifices are likely going to need to be made on that front. Frankly, your net worth, if you're to put it on a graph, is likely going to look similar to investing in a broad market index. If you zoom into specific months or specific weeks, it might look crazy and volatile and all over the place. But the reality is, if you zoom out and look at it over the course of 5, 10, 20 years, that trend is much more important when it comes to trying to evaluate where you are financially. So if you can, don't compare where your position was to last month. If you can, look back 1 year. If you can, look back 5 years, 10 years, and look, what are your savings now compared to what they were then? What are your assets like compared to what they are there? Your debt, all of that stuff. And be frank about it, be honest about it, and have a look. And I think a lot of people will realise that when they actually get in and look at where they are, they're actually doing better. And even though it might not feel like it. The reason that the feeling will likely never go away is that there is no finish line when it comes to the game of comparison. There will always be someone who's richer. There will always be someone who's fitter, in a better financial position, who's got more savings, has more stuff. No matter what you do, there will always be someone that you can compare yourself and make yourself feel like shit. So if your goal is to be richer than others, then that goal will always change and you will never hit it, and you will always be chasing that high, and it will just not, it will not feel good. And that's why a lot of people, myself included, get stressed about this stuff. When in reality, we should just be looking at ourselves and comparing ourselves to just ourselves. And if we all manage to do that, then I think we'd all feel a bit better about ourselves. So with all that said, the reality to be able to tell that you're doing well financially is that you're not trying to impress people. You're not panicking day to day about your finances. You're building wealth slowly in the background through stuff like savings. You're not panicking about bills coming in, emergencies derailing your entire life. And you're doing it quietly, slowly, progressively over years. These are the real things that can indicate whether you're doing well financially. And so even if it's a few of the signs that have been mentioned in this video, if you're hitting any of them, then be proud of yourself. Be thankful, as you are doing better than some people at least. So next time you feel a bit anxious about it all, just calm down. You're all right. With that, we'll wrap it up. If you've enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more content. And a big thing that people might feel insecure about their finances with is their mortgage, as it's normally the biggest loan that they're going to have in their entire life. And in my most recent video, I go over whether it's worthwhile paying that down earlier, or if you should instead be putting that extra payment and investing it. So if that sounds like something you'd like to learn about, go ahead and check it out. And if not, until next time.